What if I told you that the Marvel Zombies universe in Marvel Rivals isn't like the one you know? That it's similar but different in unique ways and even has an extremely subtle reference to potentially future content. Currently, there are multiple timelines we can see within the game's multiverse. Some have become central to the story we follow, converging together through the chaos of the Timestream Entanglement. But there are others, lost on the edge of the multiverse waiting to be rediscovered. But not all of these worlds should be. Some are collapsing within themselves, while others find themselves caught in eternal conflicts, and some experience something far worse than you can imagine. In today's video, we're diving into the dark, twisted lore of Marvel Zombies, from the comics to the Disney Plus series, and finally, to its terrifying debut in the world of Marvel Rivals. Before Marvel Zombies became the phenomenon it is now across animated series and video game crossovers, it started as a single story with an all too familiar infection. Known as Earth 2149, this was the original Zombieverse, the birthplace of Marvel's darkest What If. On the surface, it looked almost identical to the main Marvel universe, Earth 616. They shared a lot of the same heroes, history, stories, and even tragedies, though it had some minor and major differences. For instance, in this world, Steve Rogers wasn't just Captain America, he was Colonel America. Heroes such as Luke Cage, the Falcon, and Iron Man still wore their 90s era costumes. Some well-known stories such as the Dark Phoenix Saga, the Clone Saga, and Bucky's fall as the Winter Soldier still occurred in this timeline, but some well-known stories never even had the chance. Unlike Earth 616, this world had never met Galactus, never seen the Silver Surfer heralding his beginning or their end, and based on what would later come, it's likely that even the Infinity Gauntlet never existed here. Though despite the similarities and differences, Earth 2149 had no idea what was coming. Its true point of divergence from the main timeline remains unknown, but its end began with a very familiar face from the Ultimate Universe, Reed Richards. In Ultimate Fantastic Four issue 21, the young Reed Richards of the Ultimate Universe was experimenting with interdimensional travel, desperate to make contact with a world like his own. And eventually, he found one. A signal coming from the outer reaches of the negative zone, a voice calling out from another Earth, and the voice belonged to himself. An older Reed Richards married to Sue Storm with children, brilliant, composed, and eager to share his discovery. The two Reeds spoke for days, trading notes on science, technology, and the difference between their worlds. The older Reed said that he was gathering the greatest minds throughout the multiverse for an important mission, and even sent blueprints for a dimensional transporter to bridge their two realities. Believing he had found a mentor and an ally, the young Reed activated the device and stepped into a world even he couldn't fathom. The city was silent, filled with collapsed buildings and bodies rotting in the streets, and waiting for him was the Fantastic Four. But their eyes were hollow, their skin gray, their smiles wrong. When young Reed asked what had happened, the other Reed only grinned and said, "Ever get the feeling you've been had?" In that moment, Earth 2149 made contact with another reality and nearly consumed it. The zombies attempted to invade the Ultimate Universe, but with the help of Magneto, the last surviving hero of this doomed world, the invasion was stopped. Magneto sacrificed himself, staying behind to destroy Earth 2149's transporter, while the young Reed and his team escaped back to their dimension. But the story of Earth 2149 had only just begun. Through a collaborative effort between Marvel and Robert Kirkman, creator and writer of The Walking Dead, the universe of Marvel Zombies would come to life with two 5-issue series spanning from 2005 to 2008. The first issue of Marvel Zombies would launch on December 7th, 2005, finally revealing how the infection began. A hero from another dimension, the Sentry, crashed into New York, carrying a virus unlike anything ever seen before, a cosmic disease that spread not through science or sorcery, but hunger. The Avengers were the first to respond, and the first to fall. Within hours, the infection spread through the superhuman community, from the Avengers to the X-Men to the Fantastic Four, and to many of the other heroes we all have come to adore. Though these were not mindless corpses, they retained their powers, their intelligence, and their personalities, yet twisted by an endless, gnawing need to feed. And soon, the Earth's population was gone, and all that remained were the zombies and their hunger. Continuing where the Fantastic Four left off, we see Magneto facing against a superhero zombie horde as he attempts to survive. Though despite his best efforts, he would eventually be captured and devoured. Shortly after Magneto's death, Silver Surfer, Herald of Galactus, would arrive to announce his master's impending arrival. However, to the undead heroes, this was not a warning, it was a meal. The Surfer fought valiantly, wielding the power cosmic against a planet of the damned, but was eventually overwhelmed. In that moment, the infection became something greater. The zombies who consumed the Surfer, Hulk, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Luke Cage, Giant Man, and Colonel America, all absorbed the power cosmic itself. They became known as the Zombie Galacti. And when Galactus finally arrived, they devoured him too. With his power absorbed as well, they left Earth behind, drifting through the stars and devouring entire worlds. For 40 years, the Zombie Galacti consumed everything until there was nothing left. When the universe finally fell silent, the undead heroes planned to return home. Meanwhile, on Earth, an elderly T'Challa ruled over the surviving humans of New Wakanda, built within the ruins of New York. But peace never lasts long in a world like this. After an assassination attempt left him mortally wounded, the Wasp turned him into one of the undead, saving his life but cursing him with the hunger. Yet even as a zombie, T'Challa's mind endured. When the Zombie Galacti returned, he made them an offer. Spare what's left of humanity and we'll give you the interdimensional teleporter you seek. But it was a lie, a distraction, and it sparked one last war for the fate of the planet. And in that chaos, something miraculous happened. Some of the infected began to remember. Heroes such as Spider-Man and Luke Cage, who had once fought for life, were now fighting their own hunger to do the right thing. Together, they defeated the bad zombie heroes and helped rebuild New Wakanda, and for a short moment, there was hope. But like everything else in this world, not even hope could survive the unexpected. Malcolm Cortez, the leader of a human faction that originally attempted to dethrone T'Challa, declared he had no intention of repopulating Earth, seeking only to seize control of the small population that remained, and in order to seize his power, he used the teleporter to send the remaining zombies to another Earth entirely, leaving this world with no one powerful enough to stop him. So they arrived in a new world, Earth Z, also known as Earth 91126. On this new Earth, their hunger returned and the infection spread again. Though as the world would succumb to the virus, eventually one by one, the zombies would fall. Devoured by nanobots created from Tony Stark's technology, infused into Sandman's form, and engineered by the last remaining zombie Galacti, Spider-Man. The final battle for the fate of Earth Z would end with all zombies destroyed by Sandman, except for the Sentry. Though as this universe struggled to avoid the fate that we saw on Earth 2149, something was watching from far beyond, plotting a way to save what remained of their world. Uatu the Watcher. Through his observations, he had realized the true nature of this cycle and how it would continue to infect all realities that exist if not stopped. So, to stop the infection from spreading across the multiverse, he sent the last surviving zombie, the Sentry, back in time to the moment of the outbreak on Earth 2149, creating a perfect temporal loop. The Marvel zombie universe would devour itself forever, never dying and never ending, a universe trapped in its own hunger. And while Earth 2149 was isolated in time, its infection wasn't forgotten, because years later that same question would echo through another universe. What if zombies? That's when the story of Marvel Zombies would rise again. For anyone who has not yet watched the Marvel Zombies What If episode and series on Disney+, I'm going to go ahead and give you a spoiler warning, as we are going to briefly cover the series in its entirety. In 2021, Marvel reintroduced the story of Marvel Zombies in their anthology series, What If, where the Watcher peers across alternate realities of the multiverse for us to observe. One of those realities mirrored the MCU's Earth 616, but its history took a dark turn when Hank Pym ventured into the quantum realm to rescue Janet Van Dyne. What started as a rescue based on love and hope would soon become the beginning of their world's end. Janet had contracted a mysterious virus during her time in the quantum realm, and when Hank found her, it was already too late. As they returned to the normal world, both were consumed by the virus, unleashing a contagion that spread faster than any plague in history. The Avengers tried to intervene, but they too were overwhelmed and turned. With many of Earth's mightiest heroes infected, within days, the entire population was soon to follow. Weeks later, Bruce Banner crashed into the Sanctum Sanctorum, mirroring his arrival in Infinity War. But this time, there were no allies waiting, only silence. What he soon discovered was a world where Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Wong had already fallen to the virus. Banner's only salvation came from a handful of survivors, and together, they fought to find a cure, following a faint signal that led them to Camp Lehigh. Upon arrival, they found Vision, who had discovered a way to reverse the virus using the Mind Stone. But Vision wasn't seeking to heal everyone. There was one person that the Mind Stone could not heal, and he was obsessed with finding the cure by any means necessary. Vision had been luring survivors to feed a zombified Wanda Maximoff as he desperately searched for a solution. Unwilling to just let her die, his love became an obsession that he soon realized was a terrible mistake. Eventually, Wanda broke free from her cage and attempted to feed on the survivors. With a final act of redemption, Vision helped the survivors escape and even ripped the Mind Stone from his forehead, sacrificing his life so that Wanda couldn't use the stone for nefarious purposes. By the episode's end, a small group escaped towards Wakanda, believing hope for Sanctuary still existed, but what awaited them was something far worse. After the episode's massive success, Marvel announced a full animated spin-off, Marvel Zombies, which premiered in 2025. Set 5 years after the outbreak, it followed a new generation of survivors, including Kamala Khan, Kate Bishop, and Riri Williams, as they navigated a world now ruled by the Queen of the Dead herself, Wanda. In this shattered reality, a small group of heroes were determined to find a cure to save their world. Blade Knight, Shang-Chi, Valkyrie, and others would join the team, becoming unlikely defenders of what little life remained. But even they couldn't hold back the inevitable. The series built towards a devastating finale, where a version of the Hulk infused with the energy of the destroyed Infinity Stones became humanity's final shield. And when Wanda came for him, seeking to absorb that power to recreate the world, the result was both catastrophic and surreal. In the end, reality itself broke. Kamala awoke in what appeared to be a restored world, where her friends were still alive and the Earth was healed. But as the illusion flickered, she realized the truth. This new world was nothing but a construct of Wanda's warped creation. The virus hadn't been cured, but something else had changed. The Marvel Zombies series didn't just revisit the old story, it reimagined it through the lens of the MCU's multiverse. And now, fragments of that same infected timeline have begun surfacing within Marvel Rivals. Through the recent PvE Marvel Zombies mode, we've started to see how this universe is bleeding into the Timestream Entanglement. In the ever-expanding multiverse of Marvel Rivals, every chronoverse tells its own story, as we have seen across the 4 main timelines so far. However, there are many other timelines twisted from the Timestream Entanglement that we haven't seen yet. and deep at the edge of the multiverse lies one such chronoverse, a world on the brink of total collapse, consumed by hunger. While it shares DNA with What If's Earth 89-521, the MCU adjacent Marvel Zombies universe, the world we see in Marvel Rivals is something else entirely. A variant chronoverse, similar yet distinct, twisted by the Timestream Entanglement. The infection didn't come from space this time, or from a quantum distortion gone wrong. According to in-game lore, this universe was already unraveling after the entanglement. From within that chaos, something escaped the quantum realm. A virus unlike any other began to spread, turning heroes, gods, and mortals alike into the undead. In this world, the infection has already taken its toll. The heroes we once knew now stand as survivors, clinging to purpose in a dead world. The Punisher has been broken and reborn by vengeance. After his family was resurrected by the so-called Queen of the Dead, Frank Castle was forced to end their suffering with his own hands. This act reignited his old fire against the one who started it all. Magic, the ruler of Limbo, who exiled herself to Limbo after the fall of Krakoa, returns years later after hearing about the Queen of the Dead's return, seeking revenge. Though the lore does not fully expound upon why Magic is seeking revenge against Wanda, it can be inferred that Wanda was potentially responsible for the destruction of Krakoa. Thor, the god of thunder, returns from Asgard only to find Midgard filled with the undead. Seeking his old allies, he heads towards Avengers Tower. Blade, now the Blade Knight, honors his fallen friend Mark Spector by taking up the mantle of Moon Knight. Under the distant guidance of Khonshu, he defends what few survivors remain. Even Jeff the Landshark, now acting king in Namor's absence, abandons the seas to search for his missing friend, drawn by rumors of strange waterborne creatures surfacing near New York. According to the lore presented in the match loading screen, in this chronoverse, Vision was one of the many heroes to fall, and his death shattered Wanda's fragile grip on reality. She became the Queen of the Dead, determined to bring her lover back by any means necessary. Her descent led her to New York, where she seeks something known as K-44, a mysterious zombie symbiote compound created by Alchemax. The mention of K-44 in Rivals is subtle and can be seen on the third loading screen when loading into a match. In the comics, K-44 first appeared in Venom War 2024. Without getting too lost in the details, Venom War is considered another major symbiote event similar to Maximum Carnage or the King in Black, like we saw in Season 3 and 3.5. It's a storyline where Alchemax and the future symbiote god Meridius, who, to keep it somewhat simple, is a future version of an alternate Eddie Brock. But it gets so much more complicated than that. But anyways, they sought to establish Meridius' own reality of symbiotic dominance through a new form of zombie-like symbiotes known as K-44. Symbiotes that could essentially reanimate the dead and turn the living into zombiotes. It was a horrific fusion of symbiote biology and necrotic energy, an undead weapon of total domination. But what does this mean for Marvel Rivals? Why would the Marvel Zombies PvE mode introduce such a subtle reference to a much bigger and different storyline? Perhaps this could be clues to future stories yet to be told, or potentially a clue that Marvel Zombies' story in Marvel Rivals might not be over just yet. Perhaps it's just the beginning. I mean, after all, hunger never truly dies. So there you have it. A chronoverse on the edge of the multiverse, on the brink of collapse and swarming with the undead. What started as a dark corner of Marvel's lore has now bled into the Rivals multiverse, reshaped by the Timestream Entanglement into something entirely new. And maybe this isn't the last we'll see of it. Wanda may have been defeated and the infection may have been contained, for now, but as we've learned time and time again, sometimes the dead won't rest. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this in the future. I appreciate all the love so far for this channel, and I can't wait to dive more into the lore of Marvel Rivals. So hopefully, I see you next time out there in the multiverse.